Most campsite emergencies do not begin when conditions turn. They begin when the gear goes into the cart. The same setup mistakes appear in rescue logs before every call goes out. Wrong shelter in a cold drainage, sleeping bag rated for a temperature it cannot hold, tent door facing the wind because the view was better. Not bad luck. Predictable failures. Today, 7 specific campsite mistakes that appear in rescue logs right before the call gets made, and 3 setup and gear combinations that actually hold when the night turns serious. One later item involves a brand you completely trust. I'm Ranger Jack. 17 years outfitting clients on alpine and winter wilderness trips in the Rockies and Pacific Northwest. No brand deals. No sponsored product. My SAR log records every setup error before every emergency call. It's what built this list. Number 7. Pitching your tent in a low spot or ground depression. This one seems obvious until you are the one doing it. The low spot looks sheltered. The ground is softer, flatter. You are tired from the approach. The wind is not reaching you, and the depression feels like a natural windbreak. So you stake the tent and call it the smart move? Here is the problem. Low spots are where cold air goes. Cold air is heavier than warm air, and in alpine terrain it drains downhill through the night and pools in depressions, gullies, and hollows. That process drops the effective temperature at your floor level well below the ambient reading. Your sleeping bag's rating does not account for that difference. And water moves the same way. Rain runoff, snow melt, morning surface moisture all migrate toward low ground. If your tent floor does not carry a published hydrostatic head rating and you did not lay a footprint, the ground moisture wins before midnight. You can spend $350 on a legitimate double-wall tent, set it up correctly in every other way, and still wake up managing a cold, wet sleeping bag because of where you placed it. The gear did not fail. The decision did. In dry desert terrain, a low spot can genuinely block wind and improve comfort. That is the only honest exception. In any alpine, forested mountain, or Pacific Northwest environment, a depression is a cold air trap and a water channel. The best shelter on the market loses to a puddle if it is in the wrong place. But the next mistake does not care what site you picked, it will find you anywhere. Number 6. Single wall shelters sold as ultralight 3-season options. The weight saving is real. A single wall shelter can cut 2 pounds from your pack, and at 200 or less, it looks like a disciplined trade-off. The 3-season label makes it feel versatile enough to justify. Here is what that label does not explain. Single wall construction means there is no separate inner tent body to intercept condensation. Your breath and body moisture hit the shelter wall directly. In alpine conditions, that moisture condenses on the inner surface overnight, drips and contacts whatever's below, including your sleeping bag. A bag wet from condensation did not leak. It absorbed moisture from the wall slowly, all night, with no visible failure event. The failure mode is invisible until the bag has lost loft. Compressed insulation loses its temperature rating fast. A bag rated to 25 gigapascals can start performing like a 40 gigapascal bag when moisture gets into the fill. You wake up cold in a dry night and cannot figure out where the heat went. For low humidity environments, high desert or dry continental backpacking, single wall shelters can work on short trips. That is a legitimate use case. The moment there is real moisture in the air, occupant vapor meets shelter wall, and your insulation system pays the price. The weight savings are real. The 3-season promise is not in any air that carries moisture. And the tent mistake that follows this one costs 3 times as much and still fails. Number 5, trusting waterproof labels without a published hydrostatic head rating. Years ago, a client arrived for a 4-day alpine trip with a tent I had not outfitted. Mid-range brand, 4 stars on Amazon, 3-season on the box, waterproof on the fly. Everything on the product page sounded legitimate. On the first night, it rained for 5 hours. By midnight, the tent floor had pooled 2 inches of standing water. I spent the next 3 days managing that client's hypothermia risk. When I got home and pulled up the product page searching for a hydrostatic head rating, it was not there. Not for the fly, not for the floor. The word waterproof appeared 4 times. A rating number appeared 0 times. That is when I opened the SAR log and started writing entries. Waterproof without a published hydrostatic head rating is not a specification. It is a marketing adjective. The standard for a legitimate 3-season rainfly is approximately 1,500 millimeters. The floor, and which contacts direct ground pressure and pooling, should be at least 3,000 meters. Seams must be factory taped or fully sealed because the fabric rating is meaningless if every seam junction is open. A tent with no published ratings can still sell for $250 to $400, direct price competition with category-specific brands that publish complete spec tables. The buyer who does not know what to look for pays the same price and gets the adjective instead of the number. A brief afternoon shower will not expose this failure. Sustained overnight rain at any wind angle will, and when it does, you are already inside with no alternative shelter. Waterproof is not a rating, it is an adjective. Adjectives do not keep water out of a sleeping bag. That mistake is about the tent. The next one is about what is inside it, and this is where people get hurt more reliably than anywhere else on this list. Number 4, sleeping bag temperature rating mismatch. Most buyers read one number on the tag. Rated to 20 degrees. You're going somewhere the low reaches 30 degrees, so the 20 degrees bag gives you a 10-degree buffer. That math looks clean. Except it does not work because the number on the tag is usually the lower limit rating, not the comfort rating. EN 13537 and ISO 23537, the international standards used to independently certify sleeping bag performance, define both separately. The lower limit is the temperature at which a cold-stressed person can survive the night. The comfort rating is where a standard adult sleeper will sleep through the night without waking cold. The comfort rating typically runs 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the lower limit. If you bought based on the lower limit and you are an average or cold sleeper, you bought a bag calibrated to your survival margin, not your sleep threshold. Many buyers spend a full cold night in a bag that is performing exactly as designed. Return it convinced the product failed. The product did not fail. The label did not explain what it was telling you. Budget synthetic bags add a second problem. Synthetic fill compresses under body weight at contact points, hips, shoulders, lower back. Where fill compresses, insulation drops. Your temperature rating assumes loft that stays distributed through the night. In a budget bag under real body pressure, that assumption breaks down by hour 3. The number on the tag is not the number where you will sleep warm. That gap is where people start shivering and do not stop. The next mistake is simpler than that, and experienced campers make it just as often as beginners. Number 3. Wrong tent orientation relative to wind direction. You find the flattest ground on the site. There is a view. The wind is calm when you arrive, and the door faces out toward the valley. You stake the tent, clip the fly, and call it done. The wind does not come from the valley, it comes from the ridge. By 2 a.m. it is pushing directly into the door panel. Most freestanding tents are engineered to take wind load on the narrow end, the tail of the tent, not the door. That is where the pole geometry creates the strongest cross-section. That is where the structure absorbs lateral pressure and keeps flex within tolerance. When wind hits the door panel instead, those forces redistribute across a broader, weaker surface. The fly lifts at the edges. The poles flex past their rating. Windward stakes begin pulling from soft ground. I watched a $450 tent turn into a sale on an October ridge because the door was facing the drainage wind. 4 clients, 1 collapsed tent, no alternative shelter. That is in the log. Tent cost does not fix this. Buyers who spend more tend to trust the product more, which can mean they skip the orientation check entirely. Some brands make this worse by publishing no wind orientation guidance and no pole geometry diagram. That is a transparency failure on the brand side as much as a user error. The tent failed because of how it was placed, not because of what it cost. That is a setup problem. That is also a research problem. If that one surprised you, the next two are going to be harder because both involve brands people genuinely trust. Number 2, an overloaded or misbalanced pack with no real load transfer. The box says 65 liters, padded shoulder straps, hip belt included. The pack looks identical to a legitimate framed backpacking system. It costs $70 less than the category-specific alternative. You try it on in the store without a load, and the straps feel reasonable. Put 35 pounds in it and walk 4 miles uphill. A pack without a genuine internal frame and structured load transfer hip belt cannot move weight off your shoulders and onto your hips. It lacks the rigidity to make that transfer. What you feel under load is the full pack weight on your shoulder straps. No hip engagement, no frame contact against the spine, no distribution to your largest muscle groups. By mile 3, your upper back and neck are absorbing everything. Your posture shifts forward. Your foot placement becomes less precise. Your decision quality drops. The campsite errors on this list require active judgment when you arrive at the site. A misbalanced pack erodes exactly that capacity on the approach before you ever get there. More than a few entries in my SAR log trace back to an approach failure rather than a campsite event. The camper arrived depleted and made setup decisions under depletion. What separates a real load transfer pack? Structured foam, hip wings that contact your iliac crest, under load, not flat fabric loops. Load lifter straps that pull at roughly 45 degrees from shoulder pad to frame top. Torso length adjustment so the frame rides against the spine. Legitimate framed packs start around $150 to $250. The $65 big box option has the visual shape without the structural function. That difference is invisible in the store and obvious at mile 6. You cannot make a good camp decision if you are destroyed before you get there. And the final mistake, the one at the top of this log, involves a brand that almost everyone watching this completely trusts. Number 1, trusting a crossover apparel brand's tent because you trust their jacket. You know the brand. You own something from them. A fleece, a shell, a base layer. That product worked. The brand earned its place in your gear bag through real performance in the category it was designed for. Then it released a tent line. The photography is serious. Ridge camps, alpine conditions, expedition light. The price is serious. $350 to $600. The brand reputation is fully intact, so you buy the tent and feel like you purchased insurance backed by a name you have already tested. Here is the problem. Engineering excellence in outerwear does not transfer to shelter engineering. A jacket is about membrane breathability, laminate bonding, DWR durability, and seam tape on flat, predictable seams. A tent is about pole diameter and alloy grade, fly geometry under lateral wind load, hydrostatic head ratings under ground pressure, seam sealing at irregular corner junctions, vestibule coverage in sideways rain, and pole-to-stake load distribution in gusting conditions. Different disciplines, different testing programs, different development cycles. When a lifestyle apparel brand enters the tent category, what you may get is a pole with no published diameter specification, a fly with no published HH rating, seam tape that covers main runs but leaves corner junctions exposed, and interior dimensions measured empty, not with 2 people and gear inside. You do not discover this in the store. You discover it when the fly lifts off the corner stake in a gust on night 2. You discover it when the seam at the vestibule corner starts dripping. You discover it when the pole tip pulls through the grommet and the geometry collapses in conditions the product photograph implied it was built for. The trust you had in this brand was valid. It was earned in a jacket, in a base layer, in a category where they did the work. It was not transferable to a shelter engineering program that never went through the same development depth. I take no money from any brand and accept no free product. That independence is the only thing that makes this log worth reading. And this pattern, the apparel brand in the shelter aisle selling credibility earned somewhere else, is the one I flag most often before a client trip. That name on the tent bag came from a jacket line. A jacket is not a tent. A logo is not a hydrostatic rating. That is what is in the log. Here is what actually earns a place on Ranger Jack's gear list. A double-wall freestanding tent with published hydrostatic head ratings. Published means the number is in the spec table. Fly at 1D5 mm minimum, floor at 3000 mm minimum, seams factory taped or fully sealed. Pole diameter listed, 8.5 mm or larger for 3-season alpine use. Inner and outer layers separate, so occupant moisture condenses on the inner body and has nowhere to pool onto your sleeping system. Category-specific tent brands publish these numbers routinely. Many offer legitimate double-wall 3-season options at $200 to $400, direct price competition with crossover tents that publish nothing comparable. You have real options as an informed buyer. You have no way to compare as an uninformed one. A tent that publishes its numbers earned your trust. A tent that does not is asking you to guess, and guessing is not a strategy for a wet night at altitude. The second item is a sleeping bag with EN or ISO certified ratings, where both numbers, comfort and lower limit, are published side by side. Buy to the comfort rating, not the lower limit. If the low is 25 degrees, you want a comfort rating at or below 25 degrees. Look for a draft collar on the zipper, a cinching hood, and moisture-resistant fill for alpine or wet climate use. EN-certified synthetic bags start around $150 to $300. Certified down bags run $200 to $500. Certification is the differentiator. An expensive uncertified bag is a worse value than a mid-price certified one. One certified number on a tag tells you more than a page of marketing copy. The third item is a framed internal pack with genuine load transfer. A pack with structured foam hip wings, load lifter straps engaging the frame at roughly 45 degrees, and torso adjustment that seats the frame against your spine delivers you to the campsite with decision-making capacity intact. You evaluate the ground, you check the wind, you orient the tent correctly, you stake the guide lines before you do anything else. Legitimate framed packs start at $150 to $250. The $65 big box option looks identical on the rack. The structural difference is invisible at purchase and the only thing you feel at mile 5. The best campsite decision you make starts 4 miles before you get there. Before you buy anything in this category, run this checklist. For the shelter, is the Fly hydrostatic head rating published in the spec table? Floor rating? Are seams factory taped or fully sealed? Is it double wall? Is pole diameter specified? Does the brand publish wind orientation guidance? For the sleeping system, are comfort rating and lower limit both listed separately? Is the rating EN or ISO certified, or is the number a marketing claim? Is there a draft collar on the zipper? Is the fill moisture resistant for your conditions? For site selection, is the ground in a drainage path or depression? Have you identified wind direction for the night, not just current conditions, but drainage or ridge wind? Is the narrow end of the tent facing into it? Are all guy lines out? Is the footprint deployed? For the pack, structured foam hip wings that contact your iliac crest under load, not flat fabric, torso length adjustment, load lifter straps at roughly 45 degrees when the pack is weighted. Outdoor conditions do not care what logo is on the gear. They care whether the engineering is behind it. Pull up the product page for the tent in your gear closet right now. Find the hydrostatic head rating. If the number is not published, that is your answer without any further testing required. Drop the brand you own in the comments. Tell me how many real nights, trail nights, not car camping nights, you have on it, what held, and what surprised you. If something failed in a way I did not cover, it belongs in the comments. That is where the next entry in the log starts.